Hello everybody, my name is Kurt Brogy and today I'll be explaining the solar system iceberg chart. I know that isn't what I usually post, but I want to move more into general content than just gaming. If you don't know what an iceberg chart is, it is basically an image that has different pieces of information that are called entries, which get more obscure and less well known the further down you go. With that said, let's get into the video and thank you for watching. This is just general things about the solar system that pretty much everyone knows, such as the 8 planets that orbit the Sun and that we live on Earth. Pluto was classified as a planet from its discovery in 1930 until 2006, when it was classified as a dwarf planet. It was demoted to a dwarf planet as arguments began about if other objects in and around the Kuiper belt could be considered planets too. Periodic comets, also known as short-period comets, are comets that have a temporary orbit of less than 200 years. They usually orbit in the same direction as other planets, and some examples include Halley's Comet and Encke's Comet. Uranus orbits on its side, possibly due to an impact from an Earth-sized object striking it. Because Uranus has the largest tilt angle of any planet in the solar system, one of its poles is often pointed at the Sun, which makes it have long and extreme seasons compared to Earth. Every planet except Earth, which is named after the Old English way of saying ground, is named after Roman and Greek gods and goddesses. They were named as follows. Mercury was named after the Roman god of travel, Venus was named after the Roman goddess of love and beauty, Mars was named after the Roman god of war, Jupiter was named after the king of the Roman gods, Saturn was named after the Roman god of agriculture, Uranus was named after the ancient Greek god of the sky and is the personification of heaven, Neptune was named after the Roman god of the sea, and Pluto was named after the Roman god of the underworld. A dwarf planet is a small planetary mass object that is in direct orbit of the Sun. They are almost always smaller than normal planets. According to the International Astronomical Union, the IAU, there are 5 to 120 depending on how you categorize them. Some dwarf planets include Pluto, Eris, Orcus, and Sedna. This is referring to the conditions near and on the surface of the Sun, such as solar flares and sunspots. Solar flares are caused from an eruption of electromagnetic radiation from the atmosphere of the Sun. Sunspots are dark spots on the surface of the Sun that are caused by magnetic flux pushing on the Sun's interior. The formation period is a period in the life of the solar system around 4.5 billion years ago, where a gravitational collapse caused part of a molecular cloud of gases and heavy metals to break away. Most of the mass that collapsed congealed in the center, which formed the Sun, while the rest flattened into a sort of disk that formed asteroids, planets, and moons. The Oort cloud, also known as the optic Oort cloud, is a theoretical concept of a cloud of icy, semi-planet-sized objects surrounding the Sun at distances of 0.3 to 3.2 light-years away. It is divided into two regions, a disc-shaped inner Oort cloud, which is also known as the Hills cloud, and a spherical outer Oort cloud. Both regions would be in interstellar space and would be around 1,000 times further away to the Sun than the Kuiper belt. This is referring to how some people pronounce Uranus the same way that they pronounce an area of the lower body. That is pretty much it. This is referring to the supposed Martian channels on Mars that were first observed by Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli in 1877. Canali was mistranslated to canals instead of channels at the time, which sparked talk of civilizations using them for transport, but obviously this wasn't true. These channels were long straight lines that stretched across the surface but were not able to be viewed accurately due to the telescopes available at the time. In recent years, the channels have been confirmed to be an optical illusion and may have been tracks left by dust devils on the surface. Demonyms are the name given to inhabitants of a place. For example, the demonym of England is English, America is American, and Australia is Australian. The demonyms for each planet that could be used when humans colonized these places are Venusian for Venus, Mercurian for Mercury, Earthling for Earth, well, that's what we're called anyway, Jovian for Jupiter, Saturnian for Saturn, Uranian for Uranus, and Neptunian for Neptune. Solar wind is caused by a stream of charged particles that are being released from the upper atmosphere of the Sun, called the corona. It usually consists of electrons, protons, and alpha particles, as well as some heavier particles such as carbon, nitrogen, and silicon. Solar wind usually reaches speeds of 250 to 750 kilometers per second. Titan is Saturn's largest moon and has lakes of liquid ethane and methane. The larger of these are called Maria, and the smaller of these are called Lacus. The Great Red Spot is the largest storm in the solar system and is located 22 degrees south of Jupiter's equator. The winds there have a max speed of 432 kilometers per hour. It was first believed to be observed in 1665, which dates the storm to be at least 356 years old. It is measured to be around 1.3 times the diameter of the Earth, or 16,350 kilometers in width. Percival Lowell was an American businessman and astronomer who, as well as speculating about the same Mars canals that Giovanni observed, began the effort that led to the discovery of Pluto in 1930, 14 years after his death. During the last years of his life, he devoted most of his time to finding Planet X, a hypothetical planet beyond Neptune. In 1906, he recruited a team of human computers who calculated the regions that it could be in. In 1930, Clyde Tombaugh discovered Pluto near the region of the proposed Planet X, and Pluto's astronomical symbol was the initials of Lowell. Kepler's Laws of Planetary Motion, published by Johannes Kepler between 1609 and 1619, are three laws that state the orbit of a planet has two focal points, with the Sun being one of the points. A line segment joining a planet and the Sun sweeps equal areas during intervals, and the square of a planet's orbital period is proportional to the cube of the length of the semi-major axis of its orbit. Now, just so you aren't confused with that last one, it's basically saying that the number you get when you multiply a planet's orbital period by itself, so for Earth it would be 365 squared because there are 365 days in an Earth year, is in proportion to half of the longest diameter of an oval multiplied by itself 3 times. These laws were adapted and proven by Sir Isaac Newton and developed his own laws of motion and gravity with them. This is referring to the volcanoes found on the surface of Mars in the Elysium region. What makes these so special is that one of the volcanoes, Cerberus Fussae, had lava flows dating to only around 200,000 years ago and may have been active only 53,000 years ago. To add on to this, the environment made from these eruptions may have released the exact energy, heat, and chemicals to support life. The face on Mars is a rock formation in the Cydonia region on Mars that garnered attention in and outside of the scientific community as it looks distinctly like a face. The image was taken in 1976 by the satellite Viking 1. Some people took this image to mean that there was a lost civilization on Mars and that surrounding pyramid formations were ruins of a lost city. Obviously, all of this was false, and it was a case of pareidolia, which is where you see faces in imagery that does not in fact have a face and are usually inanimate objects. The Mars Global Surveyor spacecraft took a higher quality image in 2001, and it was confirmed to just be a rock formation. Potentially hazardous asteroids are classified as being within 0.05 astronomical units (AU), around 7.5 million kilometers, of the Earth and has an estimated size of 100 meters. As of 2021, there are currently 1,489 potentially hazardous asteroids that have been confirmed by NASA. There could be as many as 4,200 unconfirmed hazardous objects that have the potential to hit Earth. Oumuamua was the first detected object that passed through our solar system from interstellar space. It was detected by Robert Warwick with the Pan-STARRS telescope at the Haleakala Observatory in Hawaii on October 9, 2017. The object was measured to be anywhere from 100 to 1,000 meters long and 35 to 167 meters wide. When it was observed, it was 0.22 astronomical units, or 33 million kilometers, away from Earth and had already started moving away from the Sun. What makes the object weird, though, is that it had no signs of having any acceleration, as it didn't have a coma, which is what gives a comet a fuzzy appearance when moving near the Sun. It is thought that it may have been a rogue comet, which is an object not held by the gravitational pull of a star. Planet X, or Planet 9, is the hypothetical planet I did touch on earlier, but this is a chance for me to go more in depth. Planet X is said to be 5 to 10 times larger than Earth and has an orbit around the Sun that is 400 to 800 times further away than we are, with one full orbit taking 10,000 to 20,000 years. It was originally conceptualized as something that was influencing the orbit of Uranus and Neptune, and we could send a probe to its theoretical location within 20 years if using a powered slingshot trajectory around the Sun. Iaptus is the third largest moon that orbits Saturn and is the 11th largest in the solar system. It was discovered in 1671 by G.D. Cassini, and a mission in 2007 revealed several unusual features on its surface. It has a huge equatorial ridge, which is a ridge-type mound that forms around part of the equator, a very distinct colour pattern, and most of its surface is full of craters that can reach up to 580 kilometers wide. It also has a synchronous rotation, which, like our own moon, means only one side is facing towards the planet at any time. Europa is one of the 79 moons of Jupiter, and its surface has an icy crust completely covering it. Most scientists believe that a layer of liquid water is underneath this ice and is consistently heated by tidal flexing. This was first thought as the orbit of Europa may assist in tidal heating, as it's slightly eccentric. There are two proposed models for what the surface of Europa is, these being that the icy crust is either thick or thin. The thick model says that the icy layer is so big that the ocean does not have any effect on the surface, and the thin model says that the oceans potentially have melted through some parts of the ice, but the thick model was more thought to be the correct proposition. Believe it or not, Jupiter has a very faint ring around it that was discovered by Voyager 1 in 1979 and has been seen with the Hubble telescope. It is also in fact a ring system called the Jovian ring system, and is the third ring system to be discovered after Saturn and Uranus. It mainly consists of dust from different moons such as Metis, Thebe and Adrastea that orbit Jupiter. Astronomical symbols are pictorial symbols that are used to represent astronomical objects such as the Sun and the planets. The origins of these symbols are thought to be from ancient Greece and were written on papyrus in the age of antiquity. They were rarely used in research now, but are still commonly used in astrology and astrology publications. Since the original writing in ancient Greece, more symbols have been invented to represent planets and minor planets/moons that were discovered in the 18th to 21st century. This is referring to the different orbits and rotations of the planets, which gives them different years and days. For example, as Neptune is so far away from the Sun, it takes 165 Earth years for it to orbit, making one Neptune year equal to 165 years on Earth. This does not mean that you will age in Neptune years if you're on Neptune, it just means that Neptune has a longer orbit than Earth. This is referring to the heliosphere, which is the outermost atmosphere of the Sun and takes the shape of a huge bubble. It is inflated by plasma that comes from our Sun, or solar wind, and it is said to be the boundary of the solar system, as it is where the shield of the Sun's atmosphere ends and interstellar space begins. The edge of the heliosphere, or the heliopause, is where most of this energy is blocked and was discovered in 2012. Pluto orbits the Sun every 248 years and is around 30 astronomical units away from the Sun, or around 4.4 billion kilometers. And it does in fact orbit at a 70-degree angle, which is much higher than any of the other planets. This strange orbit occasionally makes Pluto go within the orbit of Neptune, but that's really it. This is referring to the surface of Pluto having a white area that seems to look like Pluto the dog from the Disney universe. But that's really all that there is for this entry and this entire tip. The Great Dark Spot was a dark spot on the surface of Neptune that was discovered in 1989 by the Voyager 2 space probe and had a similar appearance to the Great Red Spot on Jupiter, except dark grey instead of red. It was approximately the same size of Earth, 13,000 by 6,600 kilometers in surface area, and like Jupiter's red spot, it was a storm that had winds that could reach up to 2,100 kilometers per hour, which is the fastest recorded wind speed in the solar system. Weirdly, when the same area was photographed in 1994, it had disappeared completely, which led scientists to believe that it was covered up from some other phenomenon. A near-identical cloud was discovered in the northern hemisphere of the planet in 2016 and has not disappeared since, although it has reversed its wind rotation and is going towards the equator. Several of Uranus's moons have been named after characters from the plays of Shakespeare. Examples of this include Titania, Puck, and Oberon from A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Ariel and Miranda from The Tempest. George's star was the original name for Uranus when it was discovered in 1781. It was discovered by Sir William Herschel while searching for comets. He suggested naming it after King George III, who was his patron. This would have made the name Georgium Sidus, or George's Star. This name was not recognised outside of England though, and was later named Uranus after the Greek god of the sky by German astronomer Johann Elert Bode. Vulcan was a hypothetical planet that 19th century astronomers thought could be orbiting between Mercury and the Sun. It was first proposed by the French mathematician Urbain Le Verrier when he found peculiarities in the orbit of Mercury which could be explained with the existence of another gravitational influence. Many searches were made to find this planet, but none succeeded in confirming the existence of it, although some did claim to observe it. The planet's existence was disproved in 1915 with Einstein's theory of relativity explaining that Mercury's strange orbit was due to the curvature of space-time caused by the mass of the Sun. Before Eris was given its official name, it was nicknamed Xena after the TV show Xena Warrior Princess. According to Mike Brown, one of the people on the Discovery team that found Eris, they saved the name for the first object they found that was larger than Pluto. Obviously, it is no longer called Xena, as Eris was assigned as the official name on September 13, 2006. A cryovolcano is a type of volcano that erupts volatiles, chemical compounds that are easily vaporized, such as water, methane, and ammonia. Enceladus is the 6th largest moon of Saturn and has been observed to have cryovolcanoes on its south pole by the Cassini research mission. Since this, other icy moons have been observed to have a cryovolcano, such as Europa and Titan. Schumacher-Levy 9 was the 9th periodic comet that was discovered in March of 1993 by Caroline and Eugene Schumacher, as well as David Levy, hence the name Schumacher-Levy. It has a surface area of 1.8 kilometers. Strangely, this comet had broken apart into 21 different fragments and collided with Jupiter in 1994. It was the first comet observed to be orbiting a planet and was estimated to have been captured by Jupiter 20 to 30 years before its discovery. I believe this is referring to the fact that the moon is slowly drifting away from Earth at a rate of around 3.82 centimeters per year. This is due to the moon's gravity interacting with Earth's oceans, which makes a tidal bulge. Earth's rotation makes this bulge occur in a position ahead of the moon's orbit, which makes some of the Earth's rotational energy get transferred to the bulge via friction. This pushes the moon's orbit away from Earth. Basically, what's happening is that the moon is trying to orbit that bulge, and in doing so is pushing itself away from it because obviously the bulge won't be there later. 3753 Carina is a Q-type Aten asteroid, an asteroid that orbits near Earth, in orbit around the Sun in 1-to-1 orbital resonance with Earth, making it a co-orbital object, something that orbits very similarly and usually in orbital resonance to an object. It is approximately 5 kilometers in diameter, and its closest approach to Earth was around 12 million kilometers, or 0.080 astronomical units away, or around 30 times further than the Sun is to the Earth. Arrokoth is the name of a distant object in the Kuiper belt that was originally nicknamed Ultima Thule, or something that is beyond the limits of the known world or universe. The controversy comes from the fact that a certain German political party in the early 1900s, I'm not going to name what it is because that's most certainly get me demonetized, but basically they use this name as a term for a land that their ideal people would live in. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be very vague with this one because I can't say too much without YouTube not liking me. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This is a theory that states Pluto and its moon Charon are in fact double dwarf planets and not a satellite orbiting an object. This is due to the mass of Pluto and Charon being incredibly similar, which no longer defines Charon as a moon. A moon is measured in the ratio of mass between the two objects, with 1 meaning they are equal. If they are near or equal to a ratio of 1, they are instead known as double planets or a binary orbit. Io is one of Jupiter's moons and has a very active volcanic surface, with many volcanoes, lava flows and volcanic pits on its surface. There are up to 400 volcanoes on the surface and more than 150 active ones. This makes it one of the 4 known volcanically active objects in the solar system, with Earth, Saturn's moon Enceladus, and Neptune's moon Triton being the other 3. Its volcanic activity was discovered by the Voyager 1 spacecraft in 1979 by imaging scientist Linda Morabito. A Trojan is a small celestial body that shares the orbit of a larger body. They stay in stable orbit approximately 60 degrees ahead or behind of the main orbiting body. In the solar system, most Trojans share the orbit of Jupiter, with more than 1 million Trojans over 1 kilometer speculated and 7,000 catalogued. At the moment, there are 9 Mars Trojans, 28 Neptune Trojans, 2 Uranus Trojans, and 2 Earth Trojans known. A lot of people think that Pluto is the only dwarf planet in the solar system, but this is not the case. There are an unknown amount of dwarf planets due to the fact that there is no clear definition of what a dwarf planet is, but the main dwarf planets that are accepted in the category are Pluto, Ceres, and Eris. Only Pluto has currently been observed in detail, however. A moonquake is the lunar equivalent of an earthquake, which were first discovered by Apollo astronauts. They are usually much weaker than earthquakes, but due to the lack of factors to dampen the seismic vibrations, the shaking can last for up to an hour. There are at least 4 kinds of moonquakes, which are deep moonquakes, which happen around 700 kilometers below the surface, meteorite impact vibrations, thermal moonquakes, which is where the lunar crust expands after the 2-week period where there is no sunlight, and shallow moonquakes, which are around 50 to 229 kilometers below the surface. I think this is referring to how some asteroid names are intentionally jokes or whimsical. Some examples include 24680 all even, 13579 all odd, 88705 potato, and 6510 tarry. But that's really it though. There are 8 different types of minor planets in the solar system. These being near-Earth objects, an object that has an orbit that is in close proximity to Earth, Mars crossers, objects that cross orbits with Mars, MBA inner, middle and outer, which are objects that are in the inner, middle and outer sections of the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Jupiter Trojans, which I've already explained, Centaurs, which have orbits between multiple of the outer planets, and trans-Neptune objects, which are objects beyond Neptune that are still in the solar system. Theia is a hypothesized ancient planet in the early solar system that collided with the Earth around 4.5 billion years ago, with some of the ejected debris gathering to form the Moon. This would explain both where our Moon came from and why Earth's core is larger than expected for a planet of its size. The Earth's core and mantle mixed with Theia's core and mantle. But that's pretty much it. Herschel is a large crater on the surface of Saturn's moon, Mimas. It is named after astronomer William Herschel, who discovered Mimas in 1789. The way the crater impacted makes it look like the Death Star from Star Wars, but that's about it though. I think this is referring to the rules of rights of naming an asteroid yourself. Basically, whoever discovers an asteroid with a confirmed orbit that's stable has 10 years to suggest and submit a name for the asteroid. A 15-person committee at the IAU then judges the name and then publishes it in a monthly newsletter. Nemesis is a hypothetical red or brown dwarf that was originally conceptualized in 1984. It is thought to be orbiting the Sun at around 95,000 astronomical units or 1.5 light years, which is somewhere beyond the Oort cloud. It was hypothesized to explain a sort of cycle of mass extinctions in geological records. An example of one of these would be the extinction of the dinosaurs. And it is also a possible explanation of the weird orbit of Sedna, a trans-Neptunian object, which ranges from 76 to 937 astronomical units from the Sun. Miranda is the smallest of the 5 major moons of Uranus and is said to be the most varied of the group. It was discovered in 1948 by Dutch-American astronomer Gerard P. Kuiper, who named it after a character in the Shakespearean play The Tempest. When Voyager 2 passed by Miranda, it revealed that the surface had a bizarre pattern of valleys, parallel grooves, cratered highlands, and fault scarps. This came as a surprise because the moon was thought to be too small for such features. Over the past 150 years, Jupiter's Great Red Spot has been shrinking and has gone from being around 40,000 kilometers in 1879 to only around 15,000 kilometers in March 2021. Researchers still aren't quite sure why this is though, so I can't really tell you much more than that. According to NASA, Mercury is shrinking even to this day, which makes it a tectonically active planet like Earth. This is thought to be because Mercury has small fault scarps that resemble stair steps that are small enough to be believed to be geologically young. but that's about it. Centaurs are small bodies in the solar system that usually reside between the outer planets. They usually have unstable orbits due to them crossing the orbits of one or more giant planets. Almost all orbits have a lifetime of a few million years, but one centaur, 514107, whatever that is, which I am not going to try and pronounce because I don't know how to say that, but it has a surprisingly stable retrograde orbit. Centaurs usually have the same characteristics of both asteroids and comets, and are named after the mythological centaurs that were a mix of horse and human. This can be dismissed as false due to me explaining that Mercury also has plate tectonics at the beginning of this layer. When the dwarf planet Eris was discovered in 2005, it sparked a debate in the International Astronomical Union about what should be classified as a planet due to it being larger than Pluto. However, instead of Eris becoming the 10th planet in the solar system, the IAU decided to define what a planet was, and the definition did not account for Pluto, which was later demoted to a dwarf planet along with Eris. Comet Borisov is the first observed rogue comet and the second observed interstellar object after Oumuamua, which was covered earlier in the Iceberg. It was discovered by the amateur astronomer and telescope maker Gennady Borisov on the 29th of August 2019. It passed through the ecliptic, what the Earth sees, of the solar system at the end of October 2019 and made its closest approach to the Sun, 2 astronomical units away, on the 8th of December 2019. In November 2019, astronomers from Yale University said that the tail of the comet was 14 times the size of the Earth, and in March 2020, the comet was observed to fragment. I'm not 100% sure about this one, but I believe it is referring to how some moons of Jupiter and Uranus have been lost due to unstable orbit over time. That's just my guess though, feel free to leave information in the comments about this. In the late 1700s, astronomer Giovanni Paisi was searching for a planet between Mars and Jupiter. In 1801, he found an asteroid, now called Minor Planet, orbiting at 2.8 astronomical units from the Sun. He named this asteroid Ceres. He detected another 3 asteroids with similar orbits to Ceres, by the way. Now, obviously, he thought this was the discovery of 4 new planets, not 4 new asteroids, which were in fact part of an asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars. Triton is the largest moon of Neptune and was the first Neptunian moon to be discovered in 1846. It is the only moon of its size in the solar system with a retrograde orbit, which is an orbit in the opposite direction of a planet's rotation. This is strange because all other moons that have this type of orbit are much smaller than Triton. The largest moon other than Triton that does this is only 8% of the size and only 0.03 the mass of it. Ganymede is the only known moon to have a magnetic field. This was discovered by the Galileo spacecraft in 1996. The magnetic field causes auroras to circle the north and south pole of the moon. Its magnetic field is embedded in Jupiter's due to the distance between the two. When Jupiter's magnetic field changes, the auroras also change and they rock back and forth. As mentioned earlier, Percival Lowell was the person who initiated the search for a planet beyond Neptune at the Lowell Observatory in 1930. When Pluto was discovered, it was given an astronomical symbol that was a merged P and L. It was given this symbol both for being the first 2 letters in the word Pluto and the initials of Lowell being PL. I think this is referring to how originally Pluto was named after the Disney character Pluto the dog, and Charon, although not being a pop culture reference, was named after Charon, the boatman on the River Styx, by astronomer Robert Christie, because it also had the first half of his wife's name Charlene. Pluto has 5 natural moons, these being the previously mentioned Charon, Styx, Nix, Kerberos, and Hydra. Charon is the largest and is tidally locked with Pluto and is sometimes considered a double dwarf planet, as mentioned before. These collectively are called the Pluto system. Io is in fact not pronounced Io, but is actually Io, but that's pretty much it. Spurious moons are moons that were thought to be in orbit but were not even real. The only example of this I could find was in the late 1700s, where William Herschel thought he had discovered a further 4 moons orbiting Uranus after he discovered 2 others in 1787. William Lassell, however, could not see these other 4 moons when he ended up discovering Ariel and Umbriel in 1851. It was concluded that Herschel's 4 other moons were most likely faint stars in the vicinity of Uranus, which he mistook for satellites. Well, I mean, this is true. Voyager 2 is the only spacecraft to study the outer planets in detail due to it being the only spacecraft to actually have that objective. There isn't really much more to say about this, it's just kind of how it's been. This is referring to how several moons in the solar system have subsurface oceans like Europa, which wasn't previously thought. This is a theory that states that there is ammonia ice under the surface of Miranda and that the gravity of Uranus causes it to force its way to the surface, like lava. But that's pretty much it. A lot of minor planets have demonyms which were explained earlier in the Iceberg. A few examples of their demonyms are Iridian for Eris, Palladian for Pallas, Vestian for Vesta, and Sednian for Sedna. This is referring to a conspiracy theory which claims that the aliens once lived on Mars due to there being something that looks like the letter B on the surface that was in an image taken by the Curiosity rover. The person who first saw it, self-proclaimed alien hunter Scott C. Waring, said that he was the first to see it. According to him, it could also be the number 13, which could have been a base or site for the civilization. Now, it's pretty obvious that if an alien hunter told you that aliens were on Mars because he saw the letter B in a blurry photograph taken by a moving rover, you wouldn't believe him. And that's for very good reason, because this is not true. Now this is actually quite interesting. In 1178, English monk and chronicler Gervase of Canterbury, along with 5 other monks, watched the moon explode into flames. According to Gervase, they were observing a new crescent moon when the upper part suddenly split in 2, and from the midpoint of this division, a flaming torch sprang up, spewing out fire, hot coals, and sparks. The body of the moon, which was below, writhed and throbbed like a wounded snake. Now, this observation date does match up with astronomers' approximations of the impact that led to the creation of the crater Giordano Bruno. Volcanoids are hypothetical asteroids that orbit the Sun inside of the orbit of the planet Mercury. They are named after the hypothetical planet Vulcan, which was described in an earlier entry, and if they do exist, they are largely undetectable due to their size compared to the Sun, which means that they could only possibly be observed during solar eclipses. Their size would have to be around 100 meters to 6 kilometers in diameter. If they are found, they could provide scientists with material from the first period of planet formation and could give some insight into the early solar system. This is basically the rule for naming objects in the solar system. These being, the name must be pronounceable, preferably one word and needs to be less than 16 characters, including spaces and hyphens. It cannot be named after political or military leaders who have been dead for less than 100 years. Pet animals are discouraged but are sometimes allowed, and it cannot be named after a person, company, or product known only for business or names that resemble advertising. 2018 AG37, nicknamed Far Far Out, is a distant trans-Neptunian object and centaur that was discovered approximately 132.2 astronomical units or 19.78 billion kilometers away from the Sun. It was imaged in January 2018 during a search for the hypothetical Planet 9 or Planet X. The confirmation of its discovery was announced in February 2021 by Scott Shepard, David Tholen, and Chad Trejulo. It was nicknamed Far Far Out to emphasize its distance from the Sun. I briefly touched on this in the Vulcan entry, but basically, Einstein's theory of relativity was able to explain Mercury's strange orbit, which is what Vulcan was thought to be doing, by demonstrating that large objects with lots of gravitational force can wrap space-time around them. According to this theory, that means Mercury wobbles only because it's trying to take the shortest path possible through the warped space-time around the Sun. This is referring to how some asteroids have astronomical symbols. Some examples include Ceres, although it isn't an asteroid, it was given the symbol before it was made a dwarf planet, Vesta, and Juno. Dysnomia is the only known moon of the dwarf planet Eris and was discovered in 2005. The name was chosen as Dysnomia is the daughter of Eris in Greek mythology. However, the name could also be a very loose reference to Xena, which was mentioned earlier. Dysnomia means lawlessness in English, which could be a reference to the actress who played Xena, Lucy Lawless, in Xena Warrior Princess. This is a very far-fetched theory, a very far-fetched reference if it's true, but yeah, it could be a reference nonetheless. Vesta is the second largest asteroid in the solar system with a diameter of 525 kilometers. It is thought to have been larger in the past due to there being a 460 kilometer wide crater at the South Pole that slices its interior. This must have meant that there was more to Vesta, as the impact surely launched a significant amount of debris into the solar system. Galileo named several of the moons he discovered in dedication to Cosimo II de' Medici, who was the Grand Duke of Tuscany from 1609 to 1621. He initially called these Cosmica Siderea, Cosmio stars, but the name was changed to Medicia Sidera, the Medician stars, to suit the rest of the Medici family. But that's pretty much all I could find. This is obviously a joke entry, but Uranus is, according to NASA, pronounced Uranus rather than the pronunciation most used, which is Uranus. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I know this has been a fairly long one, so thanks for sticking around. If you did enjoy this iceberg explanation, feel free to give this a like and share it with your friends. But yeah, I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Stay safe, and yeah, bye.